Hello, everybody, and welcome to episode number 8 of Diehlman at Halftime, the NBA podcast that tops all others. I'm your host, Larry Diehlman. If you're joining us for the first time, welcome aboard, and if you've been a loyal listener, welcome back. We have much to get to today and not a lot of time to do it. We have 5 sections that we'll get into, a general overview of the NBA this week, and our usual highlight, lowlight, random stat, and game of the week. Let's get to our content for the week. After an exciting in-season tournament finale, the NBA has its first winner. The LA Lakers claimed the inaugural NBA Cup over the Indiana Pacers. LeBron James was the in-season tournament MVP. My predictions collapsed following the Celtics and Suns losing in back-to-back nights in the quarterfinals. The two teams I expected to be battling in the final round. Whoops. Similar to the play-in tournament, I think the NBA will make the in-season tournament permanent. I just hope they do something about those hideous court designs. Whoever signed off on those court designs, especially the ones that were dark red, I don't know. It was just awful to look at. I don't care if you're a fan of the tournament or not. Those courts are just hideous. We also saw last week that Zion Williamson of the New Orleans Pelicans is back in the news for a recurring issue. The Pelicans have continued to tell Williamson that his dieting and conditioning need to improve, but he is not listening to the team's requests. The most games Williamson has played in a single season was 61 in the 2020 through 21 season. That was the shortened 72-game season after COVID-19 began and the Orlando Bubble Championship. New Orleans is one game over 500 right now, so having your former number 1 overall pick dealing with diet problems, not something the front office and fans want to see. Zion was the number 1 overall pick in 2019, and since then the Pelicans have been up and down in terms of expectations. This episode is entitled An Abundance of Wealth. So, who's raising eyebrows at the moment? Let's get to our highlight for the week, the New York Knicks. Despite spending many years as the NBA's laughingstock, the New York Knicks have emerged as relevant once again in the 2020s. One of the original teams from the 1946-47 season, the Knicks are 12-9 and tied for 7th in the East with Brooklyn. Jalen Brunson has become the team's leader since his arrival from the Dallas Mavericks before last season. The Villanova alum is averaging about 25 points, 3.6 rebounds, 5.5 assists, and 44.1% from three-point range. He went from a sixth-man role in Dallas to a savior for New York. Brunson also injured his foot in Boston on Friday in New York's loss to the Celtics, but it seems like he's okay. Rounding out the wings for the Knicks are Julius Randle and R.J. Barrett. Despite his overall per-game statistics declining in recent years, Barrett is a big young forward who can drive to the paint or play on the perimeter. Randle is a double-double threat and is a good passer. Even with those guys to deal with, you have to worry about Emmanuel Quickley and Dante DiVincenzo too? Yep, that is correct. The only knack against the Knicks is the ownership group. My condolences go out to the fans that put up with the antics of James Dolan. The Knicks' next game is tonight, Monday, December 11th at 7:30 p.m. They will host the Toronto Raptors. To get more insight into our highlight this week, with it being the New York Knicks, we have our second guest on Diehlman at Halftime. Let's get into it. So for our second guest on the Diehlman at Halftime podcast, we welcome Aaron Hook. Aaron is currently a senior at Rowan University, pursuing a sports communication and media degree. He is among the small group of radio play-by-play broadcasters for Rowan Athletics/Rowan Radio, USL League Two Soccer, the Delaware Bluecoats, which is the G League affiliate of the Philadelphia 76ers, and the Wilmington Blue Rocks, the High A affiliate of the Washington Nationals. Rowan University has had partnerships with both the Blue Rocks and the Bluecoats. And even in a couple weeks, Aaron, you're heading to Buenos Aires, the capital of Argentina, to cover the Pan American Maccabi games. What's that about?
Yeah, Larry, thanks for having me on, man. And so Buenos Aires is it's the largest city in Argentina, which I mean, I've only been out of the country a handful of times. So this is kind of crazy for me. I'm not gonna lie. I think I looked at the flight. It's like a 12-hour flight. It's the longest flight I've ever been on. So
Wow.
it's yeah, it's to cover the Maccabi games, which are sometimes held in Israel. And so in December, the Pan American games are going to be down there, and I'm going to be a part of like the media team. So it's a pretty cool opportunity. And I'm pretty thankful for it. But yeah, I mean, I don't know a lick of Spanish, Larry, so I don't know what I'm gonna do.
Now it sounds really cool. And I think when it came to the Maccabi games or when they were over in Israel, isn't Mark Zumoff involved with that? Because he is the former play-by-play for the 76ers, and I swear I've seen him advertise this or something similar.
Yeah, absolutely. He's actually one of the mentors of the group. Yeah, they're called, and it's basically a group of professionals, and some of them are professors, and they basically come with us and are kind of there to guide us. And yeah, Zumoff, Mark Zumoff is one of them, and obviously, legendary for his time as the Citrus play-by-play guy, like you mentioned. So yeah, he's a really good guy, I think, to learn from, especially in the kind of broadcasting field. I mean, he's a legend again. So
Very cool, very cool. So thank you, Aaron, for bringing your input on that.
yeah,
But
of course.
I wanted to get your thoughts on the New York Knicks after their strong 2022-23 season that resulted in an Eastern Conference semifinals appearance. Currently, at the time of this podcast, they are 12-8 and fifth in the Eastern Conference. And before we hopped on to this recording, Aaron, I noticed you had a Knicks jersey on, and whom might that be?
It is a Jalen Brunson jersey. I have one for Brunson, one for Randall. I like this one a lot. This is the black one that they wore a bunch last year with the stripes on the side. I think it's pretty sweet. Now they've got those in season tournament unis or whatever, which I think probably I don't think are as nice, but still pretty cool. But yeah, I mean it's Jalen Brunson jersey. So the Knicks big loss the other night to Milwaukee, and we'll get into that kind of the separation between those two teams right now. But yeah, I mean the Knicks 12-8, decent start.
So that's actually a good segue that you mentioned Jalen Brunson. So my first question for you, what kind of effect has Jalen Brunson had on the Knicks since his arrival from the Dallas Mavericks? Obviously, last year was his first year in New York, Villanova alum. So what kind of effect has he had on the Knicks fans and that Madison Square Garden atmosphere?
Yeah, I mean, he is just so big time. And that's what the Nets have needed forever is, that was the whole conversation. Despite all the dysfunction off the court and whatever, the roster looked like, and, one thing Larry had held true up until, pretty much last season, is that the Nets needed a point guard, like a true, not even a star. You didn't even need a star. You needed a capable, just, baseline good point guard. And the Nets, at certain times, if they had that, they could have been competing, maybe in the Eastern Conference to go back to the NBA Finals, I think. And Jalen Brunson is that. He is just, again, so good from all three levels. He's shooting, 45% from three. He's money from there. And, you saw his game, Larry, we all did in college, how he was a guard not afraid to play with his back to the basket. He's a very fundamentally sound player, but at the same time, he's a guy that can go for 40 on any given night. So Jalen Brunson has been absolutely fantastic for the Knicks. I really, and again, that contract they gave him last summer, Larry, a lot of people were saying it was an overpay. Now it looks like an underpay. Looks like he should be getting more than what he's making right now with the way he's been playing. So
I remember at the start of free agency when they signed Bronson back in the summer of 22 and how it was almost immediate when they signed him and there might have been like, oh, tampering and stuff, but you're right. He might actually be underpaid the value he's brought to the New York Knicks. That's definitely a good point there. So next, do you believe that Tom Thibodeau is the right man for the job in New York? Now in his fourth season with the Knicks, he has two playoff appearances, including last year's loss to Miami in six in the semifinals. We've seen him in other places, Chicago, Minnesota, and he's kind of bounced around a few teams. But do you believe that Thibodeau should stay in New York long term?
I really like the mentality that Tom Thibodeau brings. I think when you think of the Knicks teams in the 90s that were, at the top of the Eastern Conference year after year for a period and all the way back even to when they won the two titles, about, a light year ago at this point. And, those teams had a very tough defensive minded mentality. And I think Tom Thibodeau is a guy that certainly has that mindset translated onto the court, and you can see that tangibly. You see guys busting their tail defensively. The Knicks play such great team defense, and they have guys I think who aren't so great defensively. I think just the effort kind of makes up for that. I mean, Jalen Brunson, just to touch on him one last time, isn't exactly a lockdown defender on the perimeter, but I think the way he hustles, the way he plays the game, and the way Tom Thibodeau inspires these guys on the defensive end has the Nets in almost every game, you could say. And, I think that's kind of elevated them. I think, again, we'll get more into the roster, and I think it's good, but I think the Tom Thibodeau effect is real. So I love him for that. And, he made the big rotation change, Larry, last year when Cam Reddish was getting all those minutes and Evan Fournier was playing, regular minutes. And he went, in a different direction, benching those two guys, and the Nets immediately started winning. And so the one thing I will knock him on is that, I think it's not even the minutes thing because, there's the joke about him playing his starters, 40 minutes every night, even if they're up a billion or down a billion. Like, for a guy like RJ Barrett as kind of like a third option, I that's been the talk, is how high can RJ Barrett go? I just feel like Tom Thibodeau is a guy who doesn't like to. I don't even know how to phrase it, Larry. I'm sorry. It's like Barrett, I'm not sure his full potential can be reached as a scorer, as a guy who could develop into a number one option. He has the potential, obviously, as he's been very highly rated throughout his career. But I think with a guy like Tom Thibodeau, I'm not sure a guy like Barrett as a third option, as a wing player, can reach that potential. Thibodeau likes his big men, and he obviously likes his point guards. And so, in that area, I think Thibodeau has a little bit to go as maybe a player development type of guy, but I'm just not sure if he is that or ever will be that at this stage in his career. So I think it's possible. I think it's up to the front office to make some, a move eventually down the line. I love this group right now for the Knicks, but I think it will take maybe another piece to get it done for him to really be able to lead them to where they want to go.
Yeah, some good answers there, and I like how you went into the RJ Barrett thing. It takes a true fan to,
Yeah.
have a critique about, oh, can the player reach their potential as a scorer or reach their potential in this team? So I'm glad that you brought that up.
I mean,
So
yeah, like I think they should. I mean, I think he can be the guy, Larry. I do, and I'm not saying fire him or anything like that. I think for right now, he is the coach for this team.
So we as NBA fans always hear rumors of how the Knicks are chasing stars. We've seen Carl Anthony Towns get thrown in there, Donovan Mitchell, even though the Knicks beat the Cavs in the playoffs last year. Do you believe they need to truly chase a big name, or should they keep building in the draft or little free agent moves?
Yeah, I mean it's tough because you define what is chasing a star or something like that. And obviously the rumors with the Nets over the years have been a part of the kind of dysfunction in the organization that has existed in the past and has held them back from competing for a lot of years. Again, Nets are looking like, if they keep playing the way they're playing, they're going to be in the playoffs 3 times in 4 years. But I mean, the Knicks, a few years before that just couldn't get out of their own way. And so I think that's where a lot of the star rumors come from, and they still kind of linger because, the Knicks, of course, a big market team, you're always going to hear it. But with this current group, I'm not sure they need to chase a caliber of a guy like Damian Lillard over the summer. It just didn't make sense anyway because of the position. But even if a guy like Luka comes available, it would be fantastic to go get him. I don't think they need to do it to get to where they want to be. And you talked about the Milwaukee game the other night. I mean, they do go and get Damian Lillard. Yes, it adds an extra level to them. Yes, and the Nets are not quite at that level, but I don't think mortgaging a lot of stuff down the line again for the Knicks and going quote unquote all in with a big trade where you give up a bunch of draft picks. I don't think that's the route that the front office is going to take. They have built this thing up, a lot of which has come through the draft. You look at guys contributing, obviously Barrett, Emmanuel quickly off the bench is a late first round pick. Mitchell Robinson is a second round pick. Quentin Grimes is a late first round pick, although I don't think he's been very good as of late or really much this season. But I don't know. We'll see who becomes available. I mean, I'm sure they would make a run at Luka if he wants to get out of Dallas at some point down the road. But I mean, this group right now, again, they're still behind Milwaukee. I think they're still a little bit behind Boston, but I do think they're one of the 5 best teams in the Eastern Conference. They're not very, old. I mean, they only have a couple of guys on the wrong side of 30. And I think with a little bit more time, we'll see how this thing plays out. I think the Knicks can reach that kind of championship level without going for a big-time star. But again, you're always going to hear it in New York. And I don't think they have to push that throttle. Although if they did, I mean, that could obviously be the move that puts them over the top. So we'll see.
Yeah, some good points that you had there. And like the ones I mentioned at the start of the question, Karl Anthony Towns, I'm pretty sure the Timberwolves, with the way they're going right now, pretty sure they're not going to get rid of him right now. Donovan Mitchell, I'm sure, is pretty good in Cleveland. Like, he's not going anywhere. God, if Luka Doncic somehow got to Madison Square Garden, that might be the end of the world right there. That would just be Showtime. That might even rival Showtime Lakers or something. I don't know, but wow, that would actually reunite Luka and Jalen Brunson. Just an FYI. Not saying it's going to happen, but
Make it happen.
Interesting. So to wrap things up, Aaron, what do you think it will take for the Knicks to break through the early playoff rounds to get to the conference finals or even the NBA finals? Obviously, haven't really seen the Knicks as one of the last 2 to 4 teams standing in the playoffs over the years, but what do you think it will take for them to break through and get to the conference finals or even the NBA finals?
Yeah, so in the current sense, Larry, I think they're good with their 2 main guys in Brunson and Randall. I think those are the guys they're going to have at the top. RJ Barrett, again, as a third option. He started off the season pretty strong, actually, especially from 3. Hasn't been as great. So you take kind of the difference, or you take the medium there, difference between them, and he's a guy who can give you 20. Be a solid third option. And I do like the Knicks bench. I think the role players for them are really good. I think Josh Hart is just the definition of hustle, man. He's great defensively. Dante DiVincenzo, they bring his old Nova buddy in, and he's been great. Isaiah Hartenstein as well. All these guys have been fantastic off the bench for the Knicks. They've been really, really solid role players. They need a couple more shooters, I think. I think Evan Fournier not playing could actually be a detriment to them because they just need a guy who can get hot in a hurry off the bench. Of course, Emmanuel quickly can be that. He's a guy who has the ball in his hands a lot. I think they need another kind of two-way guy. And again, you can throw names out there. They just need a guy who is another go-get-it type of guy like a Brunson. And when he is focused and playing aggressive, Julius Randle as well. And so I don't think the Knicks are too far away from being, an Eastern Conference final type of team. I think even this year, at their best, they could possibly be that. And so it's going to be exciting to see where they go from here. I think this is the brightest that the Knicks' future has looked, obviously, in a long time. And I think right now they have a group that, again, on their best night, are they as good as Milwaukee on most nights? I think Milwaukee is just a more experienced team. Same thing with Boston. And, they've been in those big spots before, but I think the Knicks have the potential, again, for the first time in a while, to reach that and kind of get their first taste of getting to where they ultimately want to be, which, again, is kind of restoring the motto of old Knicks teams, which is just, you should be scared to go up against us and we're going to run through you. So it's an exciting time to be a Knicks fan for sure, Larry. And I'm excited for what the future holds. So we'll see what they got.
Some very good answers indeed. Aaron, thank you for hopping on Diehlman at halftime, giving us an insight on this week's highlights section, which is the New York Knicks, and maybe we'll have you on a future episode as well.
Anytime, Larry. Look, man, you remember our offsides days, man. We're podcasters. We got to get on here.
Yeah, Aaron and I used to be on Offsides, which is one of the podcasts done at Rowan Radio. At Rowan University, we talk about a lot of different professional sports, and Aaron was a host, I was a host, and a lot of different topics were discussed back in the day, and many a good Sixers, Knicks, or Eagles debates. Aaron is unfortunately a long-suffering Jets fan as well, so
yeah, we don't need to get into that. That's
Let's go to our low light, the Chicago Bulls. A scout is never taken by surprise. He knows exactly what to do when anything unexpected happens. That's a quote by the founder of Boy Scouts, Lord Robert Baden-Powell. Well, Bobby, I guess the Chicago Bulls didn't do their homework. The unexpected, underwhelming seasons have piled on and they weren't ready for it. The Bulls are 9-14 and 12th in the East, even with a 4-game winning streak. Chicago is a hot mess right now. Rumors have been circulating for some time about how they should blow up the roster and start over. We hear, though, that Zach LaVine wants to stay. And who could forget that Lonzo Ball is still out with knee problems. He played 35 games 2 seasons ago, missed all of last year, and will miss all of this season as well. Chicago has a good group of players, like DeMar DeRozan, Alex Caruso, and Nikola Vucevic. Caruso made all-defensive first team last season, and he came off the bench most games. Looking at other teams in the East, Chicago is not even close to being a contender. At least a team like Orlando embraced the tank. Look where they are now. The Bulls might want to start a clearance sale at the trade deadline and just rip the Band-Aid off. Their next game is tonight, Monday, December 11th at 8 p.m. They will be in Milwaukee to play the Bucks. Let's go to our random stat. Since the sports world, especially the baseball world, was shaken this weekend by Shohei Ohtani signing with the LA Dodgers, I've decided to look at the richest contracts in the current NBA. The top 5 contracts in descending order from 1 to 5 are the following: Jaylen Brown of the Celtics, Nikola Jokic of the Nuggets, Bradley Beal of the Suns, Giannis Antetokounmpo of the Bucks, Devin Booker of the Suns, and Karl Anthony Towns of the Timberwolves. Booker and Towns are tied for 5th, that's why there are 6 names. All of these contracts are set to expire between 2026 through 2029. The average of those 6 players' salaries is a whopping $248,152,450. The average age of the players is 26.5 years old. Looking at this list, some have a great argument for their contract. Brown is a star on a title contender. Getting the richest contract over Jason Tatum, though, is a debate for another day. Jokic and Antetokounmpo are NBA champions, and Booker has made an NBA Finals. Beal and Towns, though, have not had a lot of success. Beal wasted years of his prime in Washington. Towns' Timberwolves are now starting to find success after years and years of underachieving. I guess you can make the same argument for Ohtani, who's going to a super team in the Dodgers since the Angels have never been able to get their issues figured out. Basically, it's raining Benjamins in the sports world. Let's go to our game of the week. For this week's game of the week, let's do the Indiana Pacers at Milwaukee Bucks. This will occur on Wednesday, December 13th at 8 o'clock. Interestingly, Indiana has defeated Milwaukee twice this season. The most recent matchup was just the other day in the in-season tournament semifinals in Las Vegas. The Pacers and Bucks are scheduled to see each other 5 times in the regular season. After Wednesday, the other 2 games will be on January 1st and 3rd. I'm interested to see if Indiana can continue their streak over Milwaukee this season. Despite years of mediocrity, the Pacers look lethal with Tyrese Halliburton running the point. They are averaging a league-best 128.4 points per game. Being the runner-up for the first in-season tournament NBA Cup is nothing to write off either. I'm going to say the Bucks will take this battle 120-115. Well, that's all the time we have for today. If you haven't already, make sure to follow me on social media. I have 2 Twitter accounts and 2 Instagram accounts. The podcast accounts are under @Diehlman_NBA for both Twitter and Instagram. My personal Twitter is @LarryDiehlman18 and my personal Instagram is @Mr_Sports18. They are also in the description on SoundCloud. And thank you to Aaron Hook for being our guest this week on the podcast. Remember, you can follow him on both Twitter and Instagram @AaronHook_. And don't forget to spread the word about Diehlman at halftime. See you next time, fellow Hoops fans.